Hello everybody and welcome to the first video in this series of videos for our Anatomy and Physiology 135 class. In this opportunity, we're going to tackle some of those important concepts from chapter number 1, and we titled this video Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. So keep in mind that we are going to be working with some of those topics that are fundamental, that are very important for understanding the concepts of this class. So let's jump right in. And if we are talking about anatomy and physiology, I think that the first thing that we will need to focus on is a definition on what our class actually means, or what our class actually means. So anatomy is the study of structures of the body and their relation to one another. So what are we doing right here? We are pretty much studying the names of the structures of the body and learning how do they relate or how are they important for other structures of the body. On the other hand, physiology concerns the functions of the body now, or how the structures carry out life-sustaining activity. So in other words, physiology pretty much works with the functions of those organs and how are those functions important for us to maintain our life. So by combining the two terms together, anatomy and physiology, we're having an overview look at the structures or the organs of the body. How are they important with other organs of the body? And we're also going to learn how is it that they're able to perform that function to keep us alive, very importantly. So one major concept is that structure, it's related to the function, or function reflects the structure in terms of those organs. What does that mean? That means that our body takes no luxuries and everything is designed the way it is for a very particular reason. So when we look at the function of some organ, its structure is going to be directly related to that function that it's being performed. Let's look, for example, at a hammer or a screwdriver. The flat head of the hammer allows you to drive nails through woods or through walls, while the screwdriver is specifically designed to go into a screw and do that particular function. If we look at the heart, if we look at the brain or the bones or the lungs of a person, the tissues, the cells, the structure, the form of those organs is going to be directly related to what they do. So in the case of a heart, we wouldn't be surprised if we find cells there that are specialized in contraction, or in case of the brain, that we have cells there that are specialized for moving messages from one place in the body to another place in the body. Everything in the human body, it's the way it is for a specific reason. Life is very organized. Everything that it's alive will follow a very similar pattern to this. So if we look at a person as an individual of an organism, we can start separating this person in different layers, which is what we call the levels of organization. So let's look at this starting from an organism and going all the way down to the simplest and most elemental component of a living thing. So if I got an organism and I were to break it apart in different organs or structures, I am going to find something called organ systems. And very probably these systems you have been hearing about them, or hearing about them, I should say, for many, many years now. The respiratory system, the digestive system, the integumentary system, which is our skin, and many others. We have 11 systems of the body. If we focus on one of those systems alone, those systems are going to be made of different organs. And those organs are individual structures like the lungs and the heart and let's say the stomach or the brain or every one of our individual bones or each one of our individual muscles. All of those together make an organ system. If I look at one of those specific ones, let's say I take a stomach, for example, and I analyze what is this made of, we're going to find what we call tissues, which are groups of cells that are working together. And we have 4 different types of tissues that we will discuss later on the class. Each one of those tissues, it's made of what we call the fundamental unit of life, the smallest thing that I can have that be considered alive. And those are the cells. Those cells work together to form me tissues, which eventually build me larger and larger and larger things. If you get a cell and you break it apart, unfortunately, each of those individual components cannot be considered alive, but they have a very specific function. Those structures are called organelles, and those organelles are made of another even smaller thing called a molecule. What is a molecule? Now, molecules are made of this really tiny, tiny thing that it's called an atom. And that is the smallest level of organization that it's unbreakable by natural means. And that's pretty much going into the area of chemistry. But everything that is alive, and also everything that it's not alive, it's made of these atoms. So if we look at this in the opposite way, we might get a expanding picture of how do we get a human being from the smallest component that I can find in nature. So an atom, I put that together and I make me molecules like sugar or fat or proteins or DNA. Those molecules we put together and we make organelles that eventually make me cells, and the miracle of life will already occur there because this is the smallest level of organization. Those cells transform into tissues when put together. The tissues combined together will give me organs, which at the same time will give me organ systems, and all of these systems together will give me that big level of organization that we're going to be looking at, which is the human being or the organism all in one together. Kind of like surprising, right? Everything that it's alive will follow this exact same pattern. Moving forward, what is life? Well, if we start thinking about what is life, we might start thinking about ourselves or our pets or plants, which we know that they are alive. Each one of these individuals have what we call characteristics or requirements of life. Let's look at these requirements of life, think about them on ourselves, just to prove that this is the right thing. So one, it's maintaining boundaries. What do we mean by maintaining boundaries? And we're all going to learn that everything in the human body, it's compartmentalized in different areas, like departments in a department store, in places in the body that we call cavities. Now, if you think about the brain has its own special place. Your heart has one special place in the human body, and every other individual organ would have its own separate space. And this is what we mean by maintaining boundaries. If we did not have boundaries in living things, many of the chemical processes would not be able to occur because they would be interfering one with the other. So we need those departments or those spaces inside the human body so that we can eventually have life. Second one, it's movement. Now you might be thinking, well, not other things that are alive are able to move. Well, moving from one place to the other is one type of movement. We are talking about internal movement, like the movement of molecules from one place to another, or the transportation of nutrients inside of a person. That kind of movement is what we are having. Nothing that is completely static would be able to be called alive. There has to be movement in one way or another. Next one, it's responsiveness. We have to be able to respond to our environment in some way. Some interaction that we might have, hunting for food or escaping from danger. That is one important characteristic of life. Next one, we have digestion, and this involves acquiring energy. I need to be able to ingest some sort of food and breaking that food down into elemental components that serve my cells to produce energy. Digestion is directly linked to our next term, which is metabolism. And metabolism is the sum of all of the chemical reactions in a living entity. So, by digestion, I am acquiring what I need to produce me energy. And it is through chemical reactions where I am going to change these elemental components to produce me finally energy. And energy is incredibly important for living things. This is the force that sustains life. That's why we get hungry, that's why we get tired, depending on our levels of energy. Producing energy, unfortunately, comes with a side effect, and that is that we produce waste inside of our body. That is another requirement for life. We need to be able to have some sort of mechanism for excretion of those wastes, even if it's by the means of sweating, urinating, defecating. There has to be a way for us to eliminate these hazardous materials that are produced in my body as a direct result of digestion and my metabolism. And then finally, we have growth. Growth means to develop from a fetal stage all the way into an adult state, and that involves several changes in life. You might be familiar with a baby when it becomes a toddler, and eventually it becomes a teenager, and then it becomes an adult. Or if you think about, I don't know, butterflies when they are in the larval state, and eventually they get into the cocoon state, and they transform into this other different organism. Everything that is alive has developmental stages. So you think about all of these 8 things together, we as human, of course, being one of the most highly evolved species in planet Earth, or I should say specialized, we share all of these characteristics. So it's important that you remember all of these things, and more than just remembering the individual terms, what do they entitle? What do I mean by responsiveness? What do I mean by growth or by metabolism? So let's think about that as we move forward. Briefly talking about the systems of the body, we have 11 systems in the body. So we're going to have to do some reading in our book just to have a general sense of what these systems are. I'm just going to give you some tips, and eventually this is what the class Anatomy and Physiology is all about. It's talking specifically about these systems, the organs inside of these systems, and what are their specific functions. Briefly, the first one, the integumentary system, it's all about our skin, this layer of cells on the outside of my body that help me get protection from environmental hazards, regulate my temperature, and many, many other things. Skin, of course, being the major organ of the integumentary system, right? And the major organ of the whole body. This is the largest organ that you would have. Following that, we have the skeletal system, which is composed of all of our bones, which serves that major function of offering anchor and support. This is where your muscles are going to attach to produce movement, and it is the bones that are responsible for maintaining our posture or providing a framework for us to have our posture, and also offering protection for those major organs like the brain and the heart and the lungs and the stomach. There are more things associated with the skeleton, but we will talk about that when we talk about our chapters on the skeletal system. The muscle system is associated with movement. Every single movement that we can do as humans is directly related to the muscle system. But not only that, the muscle system is also in charge of generating heat to maintain our body core temperature, which I think it's something really, really cool to think about when thinking about the muscular system. The nervous system, it's all about communication. It's about communicating communication, we should say, from my brain onto the rest of my body. Communication from my brain to my heart so that I could circulate blood, communication to my hands so that I could do so many things like drawing and writing and dancing and doing all this sort of things, and also to code the information that goes from the environment into my brain so that I can understand it. When you look at a picture, what is the picture? It is an image that is formed by data that is coming through my eyes, through my brain, and my brain can interpret that as a picture. Same thing with sound. So it's all about communication. The endocrine system, it's in there, it's specifically for control of chemical reactions. So in a way, it's related to communication because signals and messages, specifically chemical messages that relate to hormones, are directly produced by the endocrine system. So if we think about nervous and endocrine systems, both as systems of communication, what is the big difference between them? Think about it this way. The nervous system, it's a wired system connected directly from the brain to every single organ. And the endocrine system, it's a wireless system that communicates messages through hormones. So it doesn't need wires to get communicated. And we will talk a lot more about those two systems in the upcoming lectures. Next, we have the cardiovascular system. It's about transportation. transportation of gases, transportation of nutrients to all of the cells of my body to maintain their healthy function. Moving on, we have the lymphatic system and we have the respiratory system. The lymphatic system, it's in a way related um, to the circulatory system, but we can think more of the lymphatic system as the immunological system. This is where we're going to find our white blood cells. It has to do with removal of certain waste accumulated in my blood. So it's about transportation, but thinking more about protection against pathogens or invading organisms that want to get into my body. Respiratory system, it's all about gas exchange, inhaling my oxygen and transporting it someplace else, and then exhaling that carbon dioxide that I can no longer use. My digestive system is about energy. It's about breaking down the food that I eat into elemental components like sugars, fats, lipids, nucleic acids, those things that my cells need to maintain their healthy function. Urinary system, waste disposal system, pretty much. In there, I am going to remove every waste that I have from my blood and find a way to excrete it outside of my body. And finally, the reproductive system, the system in charge of the continuance of life, right? Every organism that is alive needs to have a way of reproducing, making additional organism or passing down genetic information onto the next of kin. Right? So if we think about all of this good stuff, if we think about our systems, we are a biological machine. We are this biological, incredibly engineered organism that has a organ or a system for every single kind of function that we might be thinking out there. So let's focus on those terms first. Let's have very clear what is anatomy, what is physiology, what is the difference between those two things. When you think about the requirements of life, remember not only memorizing what those requirements are, but what do they mean? Or what do they entail or represent? It's going to be very, very, very important. And finally, besides that, we are talking about the systems of the body. General sense of the way, just to have an idea of what the systems are. And I'm pretty sure that once you get a major idea on how all of this is, that is the first step on understanding our class very, very, very well to get a level of mastery in what anatomy and physiology is. Right? So that will be it for our first video on chapter number 1. Make sure to read your book and contact me if you have any questions. Thank you for your attention.